Hey everyone, it's great to see you again. This is Alex Slawsby, Nobles Class of 1996, here with another Nobles Innovation Series story. For this episode, the final episode of the year, a number of this year's guests join me to reflect on their lives and their careers to this point. Among other things, they share the one thing they wish they could go back and tell their high school selves, and also how they would change their career paths if they could. Let's start by hearing from Hill Moss, Nobles Class of 2008.
The one thing I would go back and tell my noble self if I could is that there is no way to anticipate what direction your life is going to go in. There will be some very unexpected turns, and some of them will be hard and some of them will be exciting. But the most important thing that you can do to set yourself up for success is really just to focus on developing as a person and building your relationships and building your communities, because they will be the through line that will be there for you through all of the different parts of your journey.
It gets harder and harder as time goes on to change direction if you don't pick a path that you were happy in. So I wish I had been a little bit more of an explorer. If I had tried out different subjects to study, shadowed different people in different jobs to see what it would be like, pick up different hobbies even. And it's not to say I'm unhappy with where I landed. I think I landed in a good place, but I do envy people who were earlier explorers.
I think at Nobles I saw a lot of what I thought were really linear paths to where people ended up in their careers and connect all the dots together. It seems like they've been planning and there's this track that they followed. But then you see when you're looking back at what you've been up to and you really talk to people who are doing something you might be interested in, you see that all these different points in their career and these experiences that they've been able to tie them together, but they weren't planned out in this straight line that, this is what I'm going to do this, then this, then this. They somehow come together, different experiences build off each other. So it being so linear, I think that's what I would take away and look back on.
I would think through, the things that made me feel different as a student there, the slight differences in retrospect that may have felt big at the time, is to, lean into those constructively, of course, but lean into those differences, because those are what set you apart then, and those will only get bigger as you grow older into your career and your personal life. So lean into the differences, embrace them, and kind of learn how to manage them as a young age, because you're going to continue kind of managing those, and that will be what sets you apart when you get older.
But actually, be a knucklehead. Get into trouble, as long as it's, as the great departed John Lewis used to say, as long as it's good trouble. Some of the trouble I got into was probably not good trouble, but, I did have a twinkle in my eye and a proclivity for challenging convention, and that's mostly good. All entrepreneurs are a little bit subversive. They're not really fond of rules. I certainly wasn't. And so get into trouble, as long as it's productive trouble and nothing that gets you expelled.
I do wish I had maintained some more relationships that I had made in different experiences. A teacher that had an outsized impact on you, someone that you met, even if it was for a brief period of time. That's something that I've really tried to work on and be cognizant of, but it's difficult. And I wish that I had, spent more time to maintain those relationships, because once some time has passed, it feels harder to jump back in.
I wish I'd stayed in better touch with former colleagues, because what I realize is every time I reconnect with a colleague from earlier in my career, that interaction is so valuable. They got to know you, they got to see what motivated you and interested you. And so as I've navigated different career transition points, the perspective of people in my history about why I may or may not succeed with the new challenge, or how I can improve myself over time, is incredibly valuable.
Just the value of mentorship and that comes from relationships, right? And so you keep the relationship strong enough to have those mentors that you touch base with when you enter in a new challenging situation, or you take on a new role you haven't done before. Just to have a couple people to call and just get their perspective on it really would help. I think would have helped me be even more successful in previous roles.
To not be afraid of putting yourself out of your comfort zone when it comes to skill building. I spent a very long time thinking that I had a very structured understanding of what I was good at and what I wasn't good at. Things that now I am doing that are specifically around financials and thinking, using the more quantitative side of my brain. I think I spent too many years thinking that that just wasn't in my wheelhouse, and came to realize later that that actually wasn't the truth. It was a narrative. And so I think being very aware of what the narratives are that you craft about yourself and your abilities.
I wish I had started doing what I'm doing earlier. There's a very long incubation time between conceiving an idea and actually seeing it commercialized. It could be a couple of years, actually. I'm working on some new ideas now that even in the most aggressive scenario, I can't see how they would come into the world before 2023. So, these things take a long time. Don't stall, don't wait, don't delay. If you have a passion, go for it. Life is short, and start now. Do it now. Don't wait.
For me, waiting to have children until I reached a level of seniority or a level of responsibility where I could really control my own schedule has been just the key to my success right now. Lean into your career now. Do as much as you can do before you become a parent. And then when you are at that level, you become a parent, you have that kind of flexibility, and you have lots of times you have a team, and you have the sense of controlling your own destiny a little bit, which gives me a lot of peace of mind.
My ability to lean into work things at certain times is, I have 3 young kids at home. It requires that my husband sort of can pick up the slack at home in those periods of time. And I'd like to think I do the same thing for him. And so I think having a spouse that has really supported my career and understands that the schedule ebb and flow has been really important for me. The very tactical thing that I started doing a few years ago is every week I have a block of time, at least 4 hours, that are unscheduled. Everyone knows their sacred time, and the bar is super high to disrupt those 4 hours that I've blocked. And I use them sometimes to catch up on work things. But if I've had a really crazy work schedule, those 4 hours become time to catch up on personal things. Like if I haven't talked to my mother in a week, those 4 hours are a good time to call her or one of my siblings. And at first I felt uncomfortable about blocking out those 4 hours because it almost felt selfish to do it. And now I realize how much it has made me happier and a better friend and parent and better at my job because I do it. So now I do it religiously, and will probably do it for the rest of my career.
I have 1 hour every single morning. And I take my dog, I exercise in the trails. I take my dog for a 1 hour walk, and people at my company, people in my personal life know they are not to bother me during that time unless it's something extremely, extremely important, because that's my time to turn off and just decompress before the day starts.
You just have to identify a few areas of your life that are non-negotiable. So for example, I have identified sleep is non-negotiable, right? There's all kinds of things that can change and that can modulate, but I know myself. I know that I am the best professionally and personally when I have 8 hours of sleep. It's just how I was built. And therefore, that is one area where I will not compromise, and I will work my schedule around to allow for that. And for someone else, it might be exercise, or it might be having dinner with your family, right? But something that you say, I will not compromise on this, and I will hold myself to it.
I am slowly but surely learning how to say no to things, and saying no to anything is an extremely unnatural act for me. I see opportunity in everything. I want to help everybody, and saying, you know what, I just don't have time is something I'm learning how to do. It's very difficult, but sometimes you got to do it.
I think it's really easy in high school and really in any other part of your life to just gravitate towards people who are just like you, that share your interests, that play the same sport, whatever the case may be. And so what I would encourage people at Nobles now to do is to seek out diversity in their life, to make friends with people who have different interests or enjoy different experiences that they may then introduce you to, that have a different way of thinking about the world or a different background that has led them to have a different perspective. And I think the diversity at Nobles and in hopefully the communities you can join after Nobles lend themselves to seeking out that diversity in your friend group. It makes you a more interesting person. It makes you a more well-rounded person. I think it makes life more fun, but it isn't, it's not always the easiest thing to do or the most sort of natural thing to do. So I think, really, I try and push myself to do that. I wish I had pushed myself to do it even more earlier in my life, but that would be the advice I'd give people.
Finding people with a lot of difference around you makes it a lot easier to learn something new and to try something new. So building those relationships with people who aren't exactly like you and embracing that sort of difference, I think it makes it a lot easier to learn so much more and also to try new experiences.
Those subtle differences that you feel in yourself that are different from those around you, I think in the high school years can feel very profound. It can feel intimidating, and you can feel a pressure to quell the differences about yourself to be more like those around you. I would just resist the urge to do that. Particularly if you want to be an innovator, more entrepreneurial, those differences are going to be your assets as you get older, and those differences are going to become more profound and robust. And so, find ways to build the resilience around owning those differences and embracing them, because they may feel like a lot right now, but those will be your assets as you get older, both personally and professionally.
Making deep, really meaningful human connections with your teachers, and there are some absolutely extraordinary teachers at Nobles, with your friends. That will follow you for decades regardless. It might be that you think you're going to have a certain college that you go to or a certain career, and that may be the case or it might not, but the connections, the real human connections you make, they will still be there down the line. And I still talk to many of my former teachers and many of my Nobles best friends I'm still very close with, and they'll be there for the long haul, so connect.
There's a huge difference between thinking about a new idea and actually doing a new idea. The difference between $0 in sales and $1 in sales is actually worth millions of dollars, because what you've done is you've migrated a concept into something that is commercialized even in prototype form. So if you have an idea, prototype it. It could be something made out of cardboard, or if it's a digital experience, you could even storyboard it out with a pen and a piece of paper. Do what you can to take the first step forward to make an idea real. At Amazon, Bezos talks often about two kinds of doors. There's a door you walk through and you can come back. You can walk back the other way if you don't like what you see. And then there's a door where if you walk through it, it's a one-way trip and it can't be undone. 99.9% of the doors you will experience are the former. Walk through the door and you can always change course. And so don't be afraid. Just try stuff.
Thanks so much to Paul, Amy, Lindsay, Hill, and Calvin for sharing their stories. And thanks so much to all of you for joining. In January, we're going to kick off a new series of Noble sustainability stories, and I hope you'll join us then. In the meantime, take care.